Welcome to the nerd. Welcome to the nerd.
Hello?
Today, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 science fiction and fantasy movies. Again, it's not going to be in any particular order. Don't feel like putting the brain power into deciding which is my favorite to least favorite.
Anyway, let's get to it.
The Matrix, I think, is one of the most revolutionary science fiction movies of the 90s. And for those of you who haven't seen it in a while or aren't familiar, The Matrix was kind of one of the more memorable movies as far as integrating the idea of a true virtual reality. In this case, this virtual reality is actually what most people believe to be the true world, and took on a lot of tropes like the Chosen One, the idea of humans being used as a fuel source, robots taking over, but was kind of revolutionary in the way they used special effects. They did a lot of cool slow-mo. I actually think the first movie had better special effects than the second, because I think they had a better blend of practical and digital effects. So yeah, The Matrix is my first entry on this list.
Another one, Jurassic Park.
Is one of the few movies from the early 90s that looks just as good now as I thought it did then. Some of the best use of special effects, I think, to date, because it was a perfect blend of special and practical effects. The dinosaurs in most shots are still really believable. I think Jurassic Park may be my favorite Spielberg movie, but is definitely one of my favorite creature features. Of course, you have Jeff Goldblum. He's one of the more memorable characters, if not the most memorable character, I think, in Jurassic Park. What Dreams May Come might not just be one of my favorite fantasy movies of all time, but also one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's the most serious role that I've ever seen Robin Williams. It centers around the concept of the afterlife, and Robin Williams and his kids die in a car crash, and his wife dies years later by suicide, and he goes on this quest in the afterlife where he runs into his kids along the way, although they're both kind of camouflaged as other characters and other people from his life. And it's a really neat concept of the afterlife. His wife was a painter, so a lot of things in his world, at least initially, are made out of paint. I think his son in the movie describes it to him as his mind needed a way that made this world easy to comprehend. So in his case, that's paint, because his wife was a painter. I think at some point they make it seem like he's actually in one of her paintings. But yeah, so he travels throughout the afterlife looking for his wife and eventually has to venture into what is the closest to a true hell as seems to exist in this world. He does eventually find her, but he can't bring her out. So he chooses to have both of them reincarnated. It's a great movie. Like I said, it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite fantasy movie of all time. Another great fantasy movie is another Robin Williams movie, of course, where he plays an aging Peter Pan. Of course, I really loved the idea of Peter Pan when I was real little. And this came out, I think I was only 2 or 3, and it's just something that stuck close to my heart. Dustin Hoffman, I think, is great in this as Captain Hook. Almost unrecognizable. Actually, not almost. He is unrecognizable as Captain Hook. If you had asked me, I never would have picked Robin Williams to play Peter Pan, but he actually does I think, a really great job in this movie when he kind of reverts later back to this more kid-like mental state when he's in Neverland. He really is able to capture that youth and just feels like an adult Peter Pan. And it really, I think why it appeals to me so much and why it has such a strong nostalgia factor for me now is because it really does play as a child's bedtime story. And it kind of just really captures that world, and may have been the first live action adaptation, or in this case kind of a sequel to a animated Disney movie. So if you haven't seen that, I strongly recommend it, especially if you have kids. I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch with your kids. Before I say the final movie, I just want to say Star Wars Episode 1 for me is an honorable mention, even though it's not, I don't think, one of the stronger Star Wars movies. First of all, it was the only Star Wars movie that came out in my childhood. and it helped kind of bring Star Wars back, and a lot of cool things came from it. The next movie led to the Clone Wars animated series, which was great, which led to Rebels, which is great. But also, Episode 1 led to some good games. There was a pod racer game that was really cool. There was a Starfighter game that was pretty cool, and Super Bombad Racing, which was kind of like chibi versions of Star Wars characters. So that was pretty neat. Kind of like a Mario Party style game where you play as Star Wars characters. So yeah, I guess my reasons for mentioning that aren't necessarily because of the movie itself being great. It really wasn't. Qui-Gon Jinn was really cool in it. Definitely cool aspects of the movie, and not so cool aspects like Jar Jar Binks. But the final movie I want to mention is
Terminator 2 Judgment Day,
which I think is one of the coolest. I think it is the best Terminator movie out there. Again, really cool use of special effects. You have the main villain is this Terminator that's kind of like liquid metal. You finally get to see Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator as a hero for the first time, as kind of the action hero of the story. So that's really cool. Like I said, mostly just a lot of cool action sequences. Terminator's just kind of the ultimate badass at the end when he's falling into the molten metal. Even at this point when he's being destroyed, sticking his hand up and giving the thumbs up as he kind of melts into the molten metal. Unfortunately, there wasn't any good Terminator movies after that one. I haven't seen the most recent, was Dark Fate, I think. So I need to check that out yet. And I heard it's the best since then, but doesn't have a lot of competition. So we'll see what I think about that eventually. But yeah, so those are my top 5 science fiction and or fantasy movies. Next, I think we will be doing action and probably conclude everything by doing comic book movies, which is, of course, what'll be, I don't want to say most appropriate for our channel, but closest to my heart. So yeah, until next time, stay nerdy.